At the family party, my parents said, "We didn't invite you for a reason." So I smiled, lifted my champagne flute, and said, "I know. That's why I brought the guest of honor. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones." It started like any other Friday night. I'd finished a long week at work and decided to spend the evening quietly. Some takeout, maybe a glass of wine, a movie I wouldn't finish. My apartment was peaceful, filled with the hum of the city outside, and for once, I didn't mind the solitude. Then, as I scrolled through a local neighborhood app, a post stopped me cold. What a beautiful setup for the Vance family reunion. The backyard looks amazing, Harold and Diana. I stared at the picture attached. My parents' backyard glowed with string lights, tables laid out with food, laughter frozen mid-frame. My entire extended family, cousins, uncles, aunts, stood smiling together. Everyone but me. The timestamp was only minutes old. For a few long seconds, I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, the kind of hurt that isn't sharp but heavy, pressing down until you think you might collapse under it. I zoomed in on the image like maybe somehow I'd find myself hidden in the background, reflected in a window, part of the moment after all. But I wasn't. I never was. My parents had hosted an entire family reunion, and I hadn't even been told. Not forgotten, excluded. On purpose. I put my phone down and stood in my quiet living room, the taste of betrayal bitter as copper on my tongue. The girl they used to ignore at dinner, the one who never seemed to fit into the glossy picture they painted of our family. That version of me was gone. I wasn't the awkward daughter who studied maps instead of makeup, who didn't follow my brother's perfect path. I was Alara Vance, lead urban planner for the city's Green Initiative, a woman who'd rebuilt her own life from the ground up. The more I thought about it, the colder I became. The laughter I could almost hear from that photo echoed in my mind like a challenge. I opened my closet and ran my fingers along the hangers until I found what I needed. A black pantsuit, sharp and precise. Not morning clothes, but armor. As I buttoned the jacket, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My pulse steadied. My makeup was clean, deliberate. My eyes were calm. I wasn't crashing a party. I was performing an audit. A quiet, necessary reckoning. I grabbed my keys, slid on my heels, and walked out the door. The night air bit at my cheeks as I got into my car. The navigation knew the address before I typed it. My parents' house, still saved as home. The lights glowed at the end of the street as I pulled up, laughter spilling into the night. I sat for one breathless second, then stepped out, ready to collect what was owed. Alara parked her car across the street from her parents' house. The soft glow from the backyard lights reached all the way to the sidewalk. She could hear laughter, music, the clinking of glasses, and the sound of people she had known her whole life. People who didn't even think to tell her they were celebrating together tonight. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel for a long moment before she finally stepped out. The air smelled like grilled food and expensive perfume, the kind her mother wore on special occasions. The front gate was open, just like in the picture she had seen earlier. She walked through it slowly, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. The backyard was even more elaborate than the photo had shown. Tables were set under white canopies. String lights hung from the trees, glowing like stars. Her relatives filled the space, talking, drinking, posing for pictures. For a second, no one noticed her. She could see her father laughing with someone near the grill, her mother holding a wine glass, her brother surrounded by a group of people hanging on his every word. Then her cousin Amy spotted her. The smile slid right off Amy's face, and that was all it took. One by one, everyone turned. The chatter died. The music still played, but it sounded far away, awkward and out of place. Alara didn't stop walking. She moved through the quiet like she belonged there, because she did. Her mother was the first to move. Diana Vance's expression shifted from confusion to panic in seconds. She set her drink down and hurried toward Alara, that tight, polite smile plastered across her face, the one she used when pretending things were fine. Alara, what are you doing here, sweetheart? Her tone was light, but her eyes said something else entirely. You shouldn't be here. Alara stopped a few steps away. I saw the pictures, she said simply. Didn't realize the reunion was tonight. Before her mother could answer, her father came over. Harold Vance looked as if someone had just told him the roof was on fire. He didn't raise his voice, but his tone was sharp and full of warning. This is a private family gathering, he said. We didn't invite you for a reason. The words hit harder than she expected, but Alara didn't flinch. I figured, she replied, her voice calm. Around them, the guests stared. No one said a word. Her brother Kalen appeared beside their father, trying to smile like everything was fine. Elara, maybe you should go. This isn't really the right time. His voice was low, almost pleading, like he was afraid she might say something that would ruin the perfect image he worked so hard to maintain. Elara looked at him for a long second, then at her parents. You could have just told me you didn't want me here, she said. It would have saved me the drive. Her mother's face tightened. That's not fair. It's just, this event was for Kalen's work connections. We didn't want to make it uncomfortable. Elara gave a small, humorless smile. Uncomfortable for who? The silence grew heavier. A few relatives quietly drifted away, pretending to check their phones or refill drinks. Elara stood still, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. She didn't shout or cry. She just let the quiet hang there until it became unbearable for everyone else. Her father finally said, Maybe we can talk another time. Elara nodded once. Sure, she said softly, though her eyes said she didn't believe it. Then she turned slightly, her gaze sweeping over the glittering tables, the guests avoiding her eyes, the perfect setup that suddenly didn't feel so perfect anymore. For the first time that night, her family looked small, like actors in a play whose script she'd finally stopped following. She didn't need to make a scene. The truth was already louder than anything she could say. Elara didn't move when her father's words hit the air. The silence around them seemed to stretch, pressing in on her, but she stood her ground. Her hands stayed steady at her sides, her voice calm. And what reason is that, Dad? That I'm not family anymore. Her father's jaw tightened. He glanced around quickly, as if afraid someone might overhear. The cheerful buzz that had filled the party before now hung like static. Kalen appeared beside him almost instantly, his face tight with panic. Elara, please, he muttered under his breath, his eyes darting toward the guests. You can't be here. You'll ruin everything. Elara frowned. Ruin what? Dinner? The illusion that this is one big happy family. Kalen shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his perfect hair. You don't understand, he whispered. Just go. I'll explain later. But she didn't move. She followed his anxious glance toward the far end of the yard. That's when she noticed a man she didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, sharply dressed in a dark suit that didn't quite match the casual tone of the party. He stood slightly apart from the crowd, speaking with a few guests, his expression polite but distracted. His gaze flicked toward the scene by the patio, watching them with mild curiosity. Something about his presence made her father stiffen. Harold's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Elara, this isn't the time for your dramatics. Her tone remained even. You're the one who told me I wasn't invited. I'm just asking why. Her father let out a tense sigh, eyes flicking again toward the silver-haired man. Then, in a low voice meant only for her, he said, Fine. You want the truth? That man over there is Mr. Thorne, Kalen's boss. He's here tonight because your brother's being considered for a major promotion. This dinner is about making an impression. Elara blinked. So, Harold continued sharply, we couldn't risk anything awkward. You have a tendency to say things that make people uncomfortable. You never understood how to present yourself the right way. We just wanted things to go smoothly tonight. The words hit her like a slow, cold wind. So you hid me, she said quietly. Because I don't fit the picture. Her mother had joined them now, her smile frozen in place, voice full of soft panic. Elara, sweetheart, please don't take it that way. It's just, Kalen's future depends on this opportunity. Mr. Thorne is very influential. Kalen stepped forward again, trying to sound soothing. Elara, it's just one night. You know how Dad gets about these things. We can talk tomorrow, okay? She looked at each of them in turn. Her father's jaw was locked, her mother's hands twisted around her glass, and Kalen's voice trembled just enough to betray his nerves. Elara finally understood. This wasn't about family. It was about appearances. Her parents hadn't wanted their successful, independent daughter here because she didn't match their polished image of success. The kind built on charm and connections, not effort. They wanted a silent background, not a reminder that their perfect son's achievements had always come with their full support, while she had built hers alone. Elara didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she glanced once more at Mr. Thorne, who had clearly noticed the tension but said nothing. Then she turned back to her father. Thank you, she said simply, for being honest. Her mother's lips parted, confused. Elara, wait. But she was already walking away, slow and calm, her heels clicking against the stone path. The truth had been uglier than she expected, but it didn't break her. It clarified everything. They hadn't excluded her out of forgetfulness. They had done it deliberately. And that, more than anything, told her exactly where she stood in this family. Alara turned toward the gate, ready to leave. Her face felt hot, but her expression stayed calm. The humiliation sat heavy in her chest, but she wasn't about to let them see it. She had heard enough. She didn't need to stand there any longer pretending this was something it wasn't. She was reaching for her car keys when a deep voice behind her cut through the noise. "Is everything all right here?" She froze. The voice belonged to the man she had noticed earlier, the silver-haired guest in the expensive suit. Mr. Thorne. He stepped closer, his tone polite but curious, his sharp eyes studying the uneasy group by the patio. Alara's father straightened quickly, putting on a strained smile. "Of course, Mr. Thorne. Just a little family misunderstanding, nothing serious." Before Harold could continue, Mr. Thorne's gaze shifted to Alara. He looked at her for a moment, his expression changing from confusion to recognition. "Wait," he said slowly, his brow lifting. "You're Alara Vance, aren't you?" Alara hesitated. "Yes," she said carefully. His face broke into a genuine smile. "The Alara Vance who presented the Greenscape Initiative to the City Council last month?" Her father blinked, clearly lost. Her mother looked just as confused. Kaelin's forced smile faltered. Alara simply nodded. "That's right." Mr. Thorne's eyes lit up. "That was one of the best presentations I've seen in years. Your design work was remarkable, forward-thinking, practical, and deeply human. The way you defended the preservation of that district was extraordinary. I was there that day, in the audience." The words hung in the air like a spark waiting to catch. Alara's family stood completely still. Her father's polite mask began to slip, his eyes darting from Mr. Thorne to Alara as if trying to piece together what he was hearing. "I had no idea you were related to the Vances," Mr. Thorne continued warmly. "When I saw your presentation, I thought, finally, someone who understands how innovation and heritage can work together. You've made quite a name for yourself." Alara met his eyes, her voice steady. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." He nodded. "I'm surprised Kaelin never mentioned his sister's achievements. We've been discussing new sustainable projects at the firm, and your work came up more than once in conversation. Your approach to community development was refreshing." Kaelin's face turned pale. I didn't realize you'd seen her work," he stammered. Mr. Thorne chuckled softly. "Oh, I saw it, all right. Everyone was talking about it afterward. The city council practically quoted her recommendations word for word in their final plan." He looked back at Alara, clearly impressed. "You've changed the way people are thinking about urban renewal. You must be very proud." Her father opened his mouth but couldn't form a response. Her mother's eyes darted between them, a smile frozen awkwardly in place. Alara stayed composed. "It's been a busy few years," she said. Mr. Thorne laughed lightly. "Busy in the best way, I imagine." Then his tone softened. "I'm glad." Mr. Thorne turned his full attention to Alara, his interest clear. The crowd around them had gone quiet, pretending not to watch but listening all the same. Kaelin stood nearby, his forced smile tightening every second. Mr. Thorne spoke easily, unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, about the tension between them. "You know," he said, "your brother often talks about coming from a family of innovators. I can see now he wasn't exaggerating, though I'm surprised he never mentioned you by name." He gave a short laugh. "Seems he's been living under the same roof as the woman changing how our city is built." Kaelin's jaw flexed, but he didn't say anything. Alara stayed quiet too, just giving a polite smile. She could feel her father stiffen beside her, and her mother's hand tightening around her wine glass. Mr. Thorne went on, speaking with genuine admiration. "We've been preparing to launch a new development project, one that focuses on sustainability and community design. It's the biggest initiative the firm has taken on in years. Kaelin's being considered to lead it." He paused, his eyes bright with interest. "And wouldn't you know, it's directly related to your area of work. Urban renewal, green infrastructure, local collaboration. The exact same principles you presented to the council." Alara felt her breath catch, not from surprise but from the sheer absurdity of it all. The very field her parents had once dismissed as unsteady or too idealistic was now the centerpiece of the opportunity her brother was chasing. The same people who told her to find something practical had thrown a party to celebrate a project built on everything she had spent her career fighting for. Mr. Thorne continued, oblivious to the storm building in the Vance family's eyes. I've read countless proposals about sustainability, but yours stood out because it wasn't just design, it was purpose. You made people care. If we had someone like you consulting on our project, we'd be far ahead of schedule. Kalen's throat tightened as he tried to laugh. Mr. Thorne, my sister's very talented, of course, but she works in a different sector. Public planning, you know how it is. Mr. Thorne raised an eyebrow. Different sector? No, it's the same mission, just viewed from another side. If anything, her public background gives her insight we could use. I had no idea this connection existed. He turned back to Alara with genuine curiosity. Would you be open to visiting our office sometime? I'd love to hear your ideas for how we can approach this project. The silence from her family was sharp enough to cut through the music still playing faintly in the background. Her father looked like he was trying to think of something polite to say, but nothing came out. Her mother's expression flickered between shock and forced enthusiasm. Kalen's hands were clasped tightly in front of him, his knuckles pale. Alara felt a strange calm settle over her. For once, she didn't need to defend herself. She didn't need to prove anything or fight for space in the conversation. The truth was doing it for her. Her family had spent years pretending her work didn't matter, and now the very man they wanted to impress was praising her in front of everyone. She smiled softly at Mr. Thorne. I'd be glad to stop by, she said. Mr. Thorne's grin widened. Excellent. I'll have my assistant reach out. It's always good to collaborate with someone who sees the bigger picture. As he turned to greet another guest, Kalen let out a shaky breath. The color had drained from his face. He didn't look at Alara. Their parents avoided her eyes too, but she didn't mind. The irony of it all hung in the air like a quiet triumph. They hadn't wanted her there because she might embarrass them, but now, it was their silence doing all the damage. Mr. Thorne seemed more animated now, his interest in Alara growing with every word. Kalen looked tense, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, but Mr. Thorne didn't notice. He was too focused on Alara. He said, our firm has been searching for someone exactly like you, a consultant who understands both the technical and human sides of development. We've had several names come across our table, but none matched your approach. Alara blinked in surprise. You were looking for me? She asked quietly. He nodded with a small laugh. My assistant actually tried to set up a meeting a few weeks ago. She couldn't find an opening in your calendar. It seems you're in high demand. Her father's face turned rigid, the color draining slowly. Her mother's lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came out. Kalen's eyes widened in disbelief. He had always been the one people noticed, the one everyone praised at family dinners. Now, his boss was standing in their backyard, calling his sister the person they needed most. Mr. Thorne went on, unaware of the growing discomfort around them. We're launching a new community project soon, something the city council is very excited about. We want to ensure it has genuine long-term impact. I'd like you to oversee the planning and review process to make sure we're doing it right. Would you consider it? The question landed softly, but it carried weight. The yard seemed to fall completely silent again. Even the faint music in the background couldn't mask the shock on her family's faces. Alara didn't rush to respond. For the first time, she felt completely still, not nervous, not angry, just steady. She looked at Kalen, who stood frozen beside their father. His expression said everything he couldn't voice aloud. Fear, disbelief, maybe even a touch of resentment. Their parents looked helpless, like the ground beneath them had shifted too suddenly. Alara turned back to Mr. Thorne. That's a generous offer, she said carefully. It sounds like an important project. It is, he replied. The goal is to create something that truly benefits people instead of just impressing investors. And frankly, I can't think of anyone better suited for it. The way you combine design with empathy, it's exactly what's missing in this field. Her heart beat steadily, but her voice stayed calm. I'd be very interested in hearing more about it. Maybe we can schedule a proper meeting next week. Mr. Thorne smiled, clearly pleased. Perfect. I'll have my assistant reach out tomorrow morning. I'm glad we ran into each other tonight. It's rare that chance. Alara walked out of the backyard slowly, her heels clicking against the stone path. The night air felt cooler now, almost sharp. Behind her, the laughter and chatter had faded into an uneasy silence. She didn't look back. The faces she had grown up with, the ones that once defined her, no longer mattered. She had said nothing cruel, made no scene, but the truth had done all the work for her. When she reached her car, her hands didn't shake. She unlocked the door, slid inside, and took a deep breath. Her reflection in the rearview mirror was calm. Not angry, not gloating, just clear-eyed and steady. She started the engine and drove away, leaving the warm lights of the party shrinking in the distance. Halfway home, her phone began buzzing nonstop. First came a call from her mother. She let it ring until it stopped. Then another from her father. Then Kaylin. Then a flood of messages. She turned the sound off and focused on the road, but the screen kept lighting up beside her, one notification after another. When she finally parked outside her apartment, she glanced at the phone. There were dozens of messages. She read the first few in silence. "Ilara, please call us back. You can't just walk away like that. Mr. Thorne might misunderstand. Don't make this about you. Please don't ruin this for Kaylin." Not one apology. Not a single word acknowledging what they had done. It was the same old pattern. Her parents rushing to protect Kaylin, not realizing the damage they caused every time they dismissed her. Ilara put the phone face down on the counter and walked into her living room. The quiet inside her apartment felt different tonight. Not lonely, but peaceful. She slipped off her shoes, poured herself some water, and sat on the couch. Another message buzzed through, this one from her brother. "Ilara, please. You know how important this project is. Don't make things worse. I'll talk to them, okay? Just don't contact Mr. Thorne yet." She read it twice before setting the phone aside again. He still didn't get it. None of them did. They weren't asking her to forgive them. They were asking her to stay small so he could stay safe. Her laptop sat open on the table from earlier that day. Without thinking too much about it, she turned it on and began reviewing the notes she had made for another upcoming city proposal. The numbers, diagrams, and sketches felt grounding. Real work, the kind that built something lasting. Minutes passed quietly. The phone kept lighting up in the corner of her vision, but she ignored it. The power she felt wasn't from revenge. It came from knowing she didn't need their approval anymore. She had spent years chasing it, trying to prove her worth, waiting for them to see her. But now, she realized they never had to. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same people who once thought she wasn't professional enough were now begging her to protect their reputation. The same brother who'd told her to leave had a future tied to her name. She didn't have to do anything to win. She'd already won by being herself, by becoming someone who didn't rely on their version of success. Her phone buzzed again, one final message from her mother. "Ilara, we need to talk. Please be reasonable." She smiled faintly at the screen, not out of spite but understanding. Reasonable, in their world, had always meant obedient. That chapter was closed. Ilara locked her phone, pushed it aside, and focused on her plans for tomorrow. She had a meeting to prepare for. Her meeting on her terms. For once, her life wasn't running parallel to anyone else's. It was her own path, steady and unshaken, finally leading somewhere that belonged entirely to her. The meeting with Mr. Thorne took place a week later in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. Morning light poured across the table, catching the silver details of his watch as he greeted her warmly. "I'm glad you agreed to come, Ms. Vance," he said. "I've been eager to hear your thoughts." Ilara smiled, professional and composed. "Thank you for the invitation. I reviewed the documents your assistant sent over. The project has real potential." He leaned forward. "That's good to hear. We've outlined a few key goals, but I have a feeling you'll see things others haven't." For the next hour, she walked him through her analysis. Her tone stayed steady, clear, and confident. She spoke about green corridors, community accessibility, and energy-efficient layouts. She pointed out flaws in the existing plan, design oversights that would have caused long-term issues, and offered practical solutions. Her ideas were sharp but realistic, balancing creativity with structure. Mr. Thorne listened intently, taking notes as she spoke. A few other executives sat in, nodding at intervals, clearly impressed. When she finished, he looked genuinely pleased. "This is more than I expected," he said. "You've redefined how we should be thinking about this. You're not just improving our concept, you're transforming it." Ilara gave a modest smile. Urban design only works when it helps people live better. That's the part most firms forget. Mr. Thorne chuckled. "I can see why your name keeps coming up in city meetings." He paused before adding, "I'd like to make this official. We'd like you to join as our lead consultant. You'll have full oversight on the design and planning phases. Compensation will reflect your level of involvement." She didn't let her surprise show. "That sounds fair," she replied. "I'll need creative control where community engagement is concerned, but otherwise, I'm happy to work within your framework." "Done," he said without hesitation. You'll start next week." When she left the building, the air outside felt lighter. She had just agreed to a position that not only rewarded her professionally, but placed her in the very space her family thought she didn't belong. She hadn't chased revenge, but it had arrived quietly on its own. The first project meeting took place a few days later. Kalen was there. He sat at the opposite end of the table, surrounded by his team, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. When she entered, the room went still for a moment. He stood awkwardly, then nodded. "Ilara," he said, forcing a polite smile. "Kalen," she returned with a calm tone. "Glad to see you're on the team." Throughout the meeting, she led the discussion with ease. Her authority came not from rank but respect. Every suggestion she made was thoughtful and backed by clear reasoning. Even the senior architects deferred to her when decisions were needed. Kalen took notes silently, occasionally glancing her way but never interrupting. When the meeting ended, Mr. Thorne stopped by her side. "You've got a natural command of the room," he said quietly. "This project's going to be stronger with you guiding it." "Thank you," she said. "I'm here to make sure it succeeds." Later, as she reviewed files at her desk, she saw Kalen approach. He looked uneasy, almost hesitant. "You really know your stuff," he said, his voice low. She looked up, meeting his eyes. "It's my job," she said simply. He gave a small nod and left without another word. In that moment, Ilara understood that things had shifted permanently. The brother who once spoke over her now had to listen. The parents who once doubted her couldn't rewrite what she had built. And she, for the first time, didn't need validation. Success didn't need to be loud. Sometimes it was just quiet, steady work, done well enough that even those who tried to overlook you couldn't anymore. Ilara had just finished a long meeting when her phone buzzed again and again. It was her mother. She ignored it the first few times, but when the messages kept coming, she finally answered. Her mother's voice was tight and trembling. "We need to talk. Right now." She agreed to meet them later that evening, mostly to end the back and forth. When she arrived at her parents' house, the air inside felt tense. The cheerful lights and laughter that had filled it during the party were gone. The living room looked smaller than she remembered. Her parents were waiting, sitting stiffly on the couch, as if preparing for a trial. Her father was the first to speak. "We're very disappointed in you," he said. His tone was clipped, the kind he used when he believed he was being reasonable. "Whatever you said to Mr. Thorne has caused chaos. Kalen's promotion is at risk." Ilara stood by the doorway calm. "I didn't say anything that wasn't true." Her mother leaned forward, her voice sharp. "You didn't have to say anything. You embarrassed us. You showed up uninvited, and now you're making your brother look incompetent. Do you realize what you've done?" Ilara's face stayed neutral. "I accepted a professional offer. That's all." Her father scoffed. "Don't play innocent. You've wanted to prove you're better than him for years. Is that what this is about? Money? Revenge?" She looked at both of them, her patience thinning but her voice steady. "You really think this is about revenge?" Her mother crossed her arms. "What else could it be? You've driven a wedge through this family. We raised you both the same, and now you're turning against us." Ilara let out a quiet breath, not from anger, but exhaustion. "You didn't raise us the same," she said softly. "You raised him to believe the world would always make space for him, and you raised me to believe I was lucky if there was any space left at all." Her father frowned. "That's not true." She met his eyes. "It is. You forgot my birthdays. You skipped my college presentations. You made excuses every time I asked you to come to something that mattered to me. But when Kalen had a school play, a job interview, even a golf tournament, everything stopped for him. You called him gifted, and you called me difficult. I stopped asking for attention because I got tired of being treated like a mistake." Her mother's face softened for a moment, but her father looked away. Ilara continued, her tone still calm. "I didn't tear this family apart. I just stopped pretending it was whole. You made me the outcast a long time ago, and I learned to live outside of your approval. That's not revenge. That's survival." Her mother's voice cracked. "You're being cruel, Ilara. We did what we thought was best." "No," she said, shaking her head slightly. "You did what was easiest. You built everything around him and called it balance. And now that he's struggling to stand on his own, you're blaming me for it." Her father's expression hardened again. "Your brother needs support, not competition." Ilara gave a faint, tired smile. "Then maybe you should have taught him how to share the stage. The only person sabotaging Kalen is the one who never prepared him for a world where he isn't the main character." Silence filled the room. Her parents didn't argue because they couldn't. The truth was too plain to twist. She stepped back toward the door. "I didn't come here to fight," she said quietly. "I came to be honest. You don't have to understand me. You just have to stop pretending I'm the problem." Her mother's eyes shimmered, but she didn't speak. Her father turned away, staring at the floor. Alara opened the door, letting the cool evening air in. For years, she had walked into this house feeling smaller than she was. This time, she left it lighter, knowing she owed them nothing. Not explanations, not forgiveness, not another chance to ignore her. Months passed, and Alara's life began to feel quiet in the best way possible. The noise that used to fill her thoughts, her parents' criticism, her brother's shadow, the constant need to prove herself, had finally faded. Her days were busy, but she chose what filled them now. Meetings, presentations, new designs for communities that blended nature with modern living. She was respected not just for her work, but for the way she carried herself, confident, grounded, and calm. At the firm, everyone treated her with admiration. Her name started to appear in local magazines and online features about sustainable city projects. She wasn't chasing recognition, but it found her anyway. The same people who once dismissed her ideas were now asking for her advice. Mr. Thorne often told others, "Alara doesn't just build cities. She fixes what people forgot to care about." Every time she heard that, she smiled, because he was right in more ways than he knew. Kalen, on the other hand, could barely look her in the eye during meetings. He was polite, overly so, but his voice always carried tension. His confidence had cracked under the weight of comparison, and for once, she didn't feel guilty about it. She wasn't cruel, she offered help when he asked, but she didn't shrink herself to make him comfortable anymore. The balance had shifted naturally, and she didn't need to push for it. Outside of work, Alara built a circle of people who felt like home. Her best friend Maya, a landscape artist she'd met on the project, became the sister she never had. They'd spend long evenings sketching or laughing over takeout in Alara's apartment. It was simple and real. She realized family didn't have to be about blood. It could be about choice, people who saw her, listened, and wanted her around for who she was, not what she could offer. Her parents never called again after their confrontation. The silence used to sting, but now it felt like space she needed. One evening, her aunt, the only relative who'd always treated her kindly, called to catch up. She spoke softly, almost hesitant. "Your parents, they've been trying to explain things to people. They told everyone you're too busy for family events. That work changed you." Then she paused before adding, "But everyone knows the truth, Alara. They see your success everywhere. You did it all on your own, and they don't know how to talk about it." Alara didn't respond right away. There was a time she would have felt satisfaction, maybe even joy, knowing her parents were struggling to hide their shame. But now all she felt was distance. She didn't need them to admit they were wrong. Their discomfort was proof enough. Her success had become a quiet mirror, showing them what they refused to see when they had the chance. Weeks later, Alara attended a public forum where she presented a plan for a new green district. As she stood on stage, the room filled with applause. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she remembered that night at the party. The way her father's voice had tried to cut her down, the way her mother's eyes had looked through her like she didn't belong. Those memories didn't hurt anymore. They felt like old stories she'd finally outgrown. That night, she sat by her window with a cup of tea, the city lights stretching below her. She realized her revenge had never been about punishing anyone. It was about living freely, without waiting for approval or permission. She didn't need to prove she was good enough. She always had been. Looking out into the glowing skyline, she whispered to herself, "It's over." Not with bitterness, but with peace. She had built something stronger than revenge. She had built herself a life. One that no one could take away or explain away. Her story wasn't about payback. It was about release. About walking away without looking back. And maybe somewhere out there, someone who had been made to feel small would hear it and realize they could do the same. Find their strength in silence and build a world that finally saw them. Do you think Alara did the right thing by walking away from her family and choosing peace over proving herself? Or should she have tried to mend things? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength after betrayal.